Welcome to Sacred TREKS, a show where we take Star Trek as sacred, in order to see what lessons we can take for our daily lives. For this episode, let's discuss the Star Trek The Original Series episode Dagger of the Mind through the theme of skepticism, because this is Sacred TREKS.
Space, the final frontier.
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 It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards.
A human being dead.
A single act of compassion can put you in touch with your own humanity.
Loss of life is to be mourned, but only if the life was wasted. My child's was not.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us.
Your father was captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives. I dare you to do better.
You're a Starfleet captain. You believe in service, sacrifice, compassion, and love.
The past is written, but the future is left for us to write. And we have powerful tools, Rios. Openness, optimism, and the spirit of curiosity.
The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
Or the one.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Alright, it's time for the synopsis section, where we go over the plot of the episode as well as make fun of it in order to understand that when we take something as sacred, it's also important to acknowledge that it has flaws. The USS Enterprise is exchanging supplies with Tantalus 5, a colony for the criminally insane, and giving them what literally looks like gigantic pill bottles. The Enterprise also beams up a container of classified materials that apparently no one in the transporter room realized contained an actual dude. The supposed prisoner escapes, proving that security on starships really is atrocious, and arrives all the way on the bridge demanding asylum. Then Spock does the thing! He does the Vulcan Nerve Pinch for the first time! We're seeing canon being built right in front of us, folks. Tantalus 5 asks for their prisoner back, but in sickbay, McCoy can find no reason for the man's clearly agitated health. The man is identified by the computer as Dr. Van Gelder, the assistant to Dr. Adams, the director of the Tantalus Treatment Center. McCoy argues that all the reports from Tantalus about Van Gelder's condition don't accurately say what's wrong with him, but always have a basic ring of truth in it. McCoy becomes highly skeptical, despite Kirk thinking everything is on the up and up, and Dr. Adams being explicitly not suspicious at every single turn.
Are you passing near any hospital facilities superior to ours? I'd like Van Gelder to have the best possible treatment, of course.
But McCoy, being the savvy doctor that he is, forces Kirk to have an investigation into the Tantalus colony.
If something unusual is going on down there.
An assumption, Doctor.
I'm required to enter any reasonable doubts into my medical law. That requires you to answer in your law.
Kirk beams down with the wonderful Dr. Noel, who reminds Kirk that they met at the ship's Christmas party. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I love how every time that Kirk expresses some form of sexuality in this series, Spock just does this thing where he's like, I don't know what to tell you, man, and he's always just bemused by the whole experience.
You dropped
Yes,
him?
yes, I remember.
Problem, Captain?
Also, her name is Dr. Noel, and they met at the Christmas party. I love how someone in the writer's room must have really been kind of tired that day and just said, I don't know, her name's Noel. Kirk tells Spock to tell McCoy,
You tell McCoy that she had better check out as the best assistant I ever had.
showcasing that even in the 23rd century, women have a higher standard placed on them because of their attractiveness to men. Glad the 23rd century is such a perfect utopia, right? But it's fine, because we basically can see Dr. Noel's panties for the rest of this entire episode. Anyways, Noel and Kirk arrive on the planet, and there's a scary elevator that causes Noel to hug Kirk, because why not? And Dr. Adams begins to show the two around the facility. Noel seems to have zero questions whatsoever for Adams, just completely agreeing with him. But Kirk begins to question the totally not suspicious at all things going on, like the prisoners basically walking around like zombies. Kirk eventually finds the neural neutralizer, which is a not at all creepy name for a piece of tech, which Adams says is antiquated. But Kirk wonders why it's still in use if that's the case. Back on the Enterprise, Spock mind melds with Dr. Van Gelder. More canon here, folks. That's the first time that Spock mind melds as well in the series. Who would have thought that this random episode of Star Trek introduced so much of Star Trek's iconography? It almost makes me sad that the weird handprint uniforms in this episode also didn't stick around in canon. Spock learns about the neural neutralizer. Kirk and Noelle go to investigate the machine, and Noelle uses it to mess with Kirk, saying she wants him to fall in love with her. Because clearly, as the episode's guest woman character in the series, that's her only stated goal, to get Kirk to love her.
You danced. You talked about the stars. I suggest now that it happened in a different way. You swept me off my feet.
Women in Star Trek the original series either always want Kirk to love them, or are just scorned that Kirk didn't love them well enough. Or sometimes both at the same time. Dr. Adams shows up and begins to use the machine to try to mind control Kirk. Kirk then later helps Noelle slip away during a break because apparently this criminal facility doesn't really make sure that their rooms are escape-proof. Noelle eventually destroys the power generator, allowing Kirk to escape and Spock to beam down. Spock turns back on the power, putting Dr. Adams under the neural neutralizer by mistake. Spock finds Kirk kissing Noelle, which gives us another wonderful moment where Spock basically can go, "What the hell, man? We have other things going on. Can you at least put it in your pants for like 5 seconds?" Kirk and Spock then find Dr. Adams dead, having his mind completely emptied by the neutralizer. The episode ends with Kirk leaving, presumably still wondering why he is still having daydreams about the Christmas parties with Dr. Noelle. Because we never see Dr. Noelle ever again. So let's look at this episode through the theme of skepticism. Certainly in today's day and age, skepticism is a real issue that we tangle with. And it honestly makes a lot of what Dagger of the Mind touches upon surprisingly prescient, considering that this episode was made over 50 years ago. In Dagger of the Mind, we are initially presented with a conflict between McCoy and Kirk. Kirk trusts that Dr. Adams on the Tantalus colony is actually doing good work, helping his patients and having improved conditions for criminals throughout the Federation. But McCoy actually questions this, pushing back on Kirk's basic assumptions that anything can be so benevolent.
Have you ever been to a penal colony since they started following his theories?
Cage is a cage, Jim.
You're behind the times, Bones. They're more like resort colonies now.
We base much of our lives on basic assumptions of knowledge. But truly, do you know anything for sure? I mean, how do you know for sure that I, Jesse Gender, am the one that's in this video? I might have an identical twin. This might be a deep fake video. You might be misremembering what channel you clicked on when you turned on this video, and I may actually be Ketwolski in disguise. That last option is actually probably the most likely. I am Ketwolski. Hey everybody, it's time for another one of our hashtag Star Trek Picard discussions. Sorry, no, I won't do that.
Look here, Jesse, if you want to be Ketwolski, then guess what? You've got to wear the swag.
But ultimately, we can't know anything for 100% certain, as even base assumptions like 2 + 3 = 5 or a square has 4 sides may all just be based on our own sensory perceptions which may ultimately be flawed or controlled by someone else. This is why a lot of science is based on skepticism, and a healthy dose of it. All science is about questioning the world around us. Scientists often look for proof, basic signs that things are true. And if we test something over and over and over again and it all comes out the same way, then most likely that thing we are testing is true. But even the most tested of scientific theories, the most rigorously explained, is always open for more skepticism once more new information is added. And this is a feeling that McCoy passes on to Kirk, especially when he looks into Dr. Van Gelder's situation on the Enterprise. He asks Kirk to begin to question if what Dr. Adams is doing is actually best, even if on the surface everything seems to be doing well. Despite Dr. Adams saying all the right things to assure Kirk begins to accept McCoy's skepticism, questioning Dr. Adams. Ultimately, Kirk and McCoy are proved right. Adams is actually doing harm to those around him, using his neural neutralizer to control his patients and empty their minds to his demands. And Kirk is only able to stop Adams because he remained skeptical the entire time he was on the planet. So obviously, having a sense of skepticism is incredibly healthy and important. Yet there is an issue inherent within skepticism. And that's the question of, where do we stop? This problem also exists in our society today, and has even been weaponized by political actors, especially within the United States. I hate to get expressly political here within Sacred TREKS, but I think it's important to discuss this to illuminate a point. In a recent Atlantic article published in February 2020, journalist McKay Coppins describes having created a Facebook account where he prompted the site's algorithm to target him with Donald Trump Facebook ads. As a result, he was targeted by a ton of Facebook ads from Trump and conservative groups. And Coppins, someone who describes himself as fairly media savvy and even left-leaning, still found himself affected by these ads. I was surprised by the effect it had on me. I assumed that my skepticism and media literacy would inoculate me against such distortions. But I soon found myself reflexively questioning every headline. It wasn't that I believed Trump and his supporters were telling the truth. It was that, in this heightened state of suspicion, truth itself, about Ukraine, impeachment, or anything else, felt more and more difficult to locate. With each swipe, the notion of observable reality drifted further out of reach. I would encourage all of you, if you're interested in the specific political ramifications of such things, to check out Coppins' article. But it's the generalized point that I wish to make here, that skepticism has been weaponized today, to the point where we question everything sent to us. What is true? What do we believe? If everything and everyone has an agenda, who are we to trust? If the New York Times, or the Trump campaign, or the news media, or corporations, or Bernie Sanders, or Biden all want us to believe something specific, and are all telling us specific facts and figures, how do we trust anything? Well, I think Dagger of the Mind actually provides us a brief glimpse at that answer. At one point in the episode, Dr. Adams references a Jewish myth.
You remind me of the ancient skeptic who demanded of the wise old sage to be taught all the world's wisdom while standing on one foot.
And apologies, by the way, if I get some of the Jewish words wrong. I'm not entirely up to date on Jewish pronunciation, so I might get a few things wrong here and there. But in this story, a non-Jew who is open to converting to Judaism asks to be told what Judaism means, not in 6 weeks, but while standing on one foot. That is, in as brief a way as possible, in a soundbite. And Hillel, an important rabbinic figure in Jewish history, states that the answer is, quote, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow," along with stating an admonition for the man to keep studying Jewish texts, not just using this one soundbite as his full understanding of Judaism. Now, I'm not Jewish, nor am I a Jewish scholar, so I'm not exactly the best person to give you a full context of the story. But what I personally take from this story, at least in the context of skepticism and Dagger of the Mind, is that when we are skeptical, at least when it comes to social or political issues, which is what Star Trek is all about, by the way, what we are looking for really is what is the intention? What is the purpose? And like Star Trek, I think what we need to look for is those people whose goal it is to try to help those around us. As Hillel states, to try to do to others what we would want to ourselves. But then remember that we must always keep studying and learning along the way as well. To never stop questioning things, but at least hold something intrinsically true if we believe the people behind it. As they say, trust, but verify. Star Trek as a show is all about trying to do best for others, to celebrate the diversity of people and humanity. Yet it sometimes fails in many ways to do so, whether from issues stemming from the era in which it was written, or the writer's bias, or budget, or studio decisions. But in the end, the show is about doing what's best for others and trying to learn every day, to try to teach us as an audience to do better. And I think that's what the goal of skepticism should be as well. To always question how we can be better, to question our knowledge, but always with the goal to help others around us, not just ourselves. And eventually, just know that we will have to fight for others at the end of the day. That remaining on the sidelines, questioning things endlessly, cannot last indefinitely. But that we must all, like Captain Kirk, step up to help.
Take us out of orbit, Mr. Spock. Ahead, warp factor 1.
Acknowledged, Captain. Warp factor 1.
That's it for this episode of Sacred TREKS. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about this theme of skepticism and the episode Dagger of the Mind. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more Sacred TREKS and discussions of Star Trek and other elements of geek culture. And if you want to help make these videos even better and help me pay the bills, please consider giving to my Patreon. Every little bit helps me, and it helps me eventually do this full time one day. But regardless of if you subscribe or give to my Patreon, I'm just glad that you stopped by, and I hope that you, as always, Live long and prosper. Thank you all of you for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons, including my amazing commander level and above patrons: Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen, Eli Berg-Moss, Sela Roman, Christina Dalliance, Greg Gillum, Stefan Schuhart, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Ish the Mad, Randy Thompson, Mouse Pounder, Wellington Marcus, Lorena Mesa, Alexander Miller, Mari Neckar, Gavin Robinson, Michael Beam, Aaron Brown, Munir Amlani, Maggie Evans, Maeve, Wendizzle Bizzle, Dante St. James, Wayne Twitchell, Patrick Shannon, Din Hagney, Mystic the Monarchete, Bree Beecher, and Polly Mina. All of your support means so much to me right now, so thank you to all of you. Live long and prosper.